Hey gang, welcome back to the channel. My name is Nicky V. I'm a studio musician and producer here in Nashville. So I play guitar on people's records, and I occasionally get here on YouTube and ramble on about different guitar topics or behind the scenes on sessions, things like that. So if you're not familiar with the channel and you like this stuff, please like and subscribe. And another little side note, we have the finally long-awaited guitar course is getting ready to come out, guys. And it's August 1st is the date. So part 1's coming out on August 1st and part 2 is coming out September 1st. Part 1 is kind of geared towards intermediate guitar players who are kind of stuck in a rut and wanting to be able to play freely anywhere across the guitar neck in any key. Puts together a great practice routine for you that you can kind of use the rest of your life. So keep an eye out for that. If you guys like this kind of stuff I'm getting ready to talk about, please like and subscribe. And that's another good way to find out when the guitar course is coming. So today, Strat setup tips, right? Enough of that intro sales pitchy crap. So here we go. The Stratocaster is a very finicky instrument to start. It has tuning issues if it's not set up properly. And you see some guys that like get along great with the Strat, right? And it seems like it's total home base for them. And then you get one and you're excited and it just doesn't work for you. And a lot of the time that's because mostly of tuning. And where people go wrong, and I actually learned this from Carl Verheyen. Carl Verheyen, for those of you that don't know who that is, he's like the session man of LA. So like all those huge film scores, all the James Bond movies, all that kind of stuff, that's Carl playing on 90% of that stuff. Maybe not 90% of it, but he's one of the main cats out there doing it. So here's the secret, gang. You gotta angle this thing. So Carl calls this the claw, right? You see how this is not parallel? This line is not parallel with this line. It's angled like this. And the reason that it's angled like this is because your string tension has to match your spring tension. And there's another video just on this very one specific thing that Carl put out through the Musicians Institute a while back. So you can find that video, just type in Carl Verheyen whammy bar or something. But basically what he's saying is these strings right here, your E, A, and D strings, have more tension than your G, B, and E strings. And so there's an imbalance there that we have to compensate for. And the way we compensate for that is right here. So like I said, your spring tension has to match your string tension. So we need to angle this like this so we have higher tension right here. So this is our E, A, and D string, right? Our lower, thicker strings, which have more tension, so we need more spring tension to balance that and equal it out. And then we have less tension here on the E, B, and G strings. And use the 3 spring thing, just trust me on that. Some people, angle them all in and all this crap, put them just like this. This is all your favorite guitar players, that's probably how they're doing it. And the next thing is we have to figure out, once you get that angle right, we're going to talk about that a little bit too, but generally kind of use that as like a guide. Get a close-up of that so you can see it a little bit better. That right there is what you want it to look like. Just about like that. Let me try to center that for you. So the next thing we need to figure out is how far we need to move this up or down. And if you go down with it, it's going to raise the bridge, the level of float in the bridge, which gives you more clearance between here and here. If you tighten it, it pulls this down against the flat against the body of the guitar, and then you don't have anywhere to go with it. So I want it floating. Now the degree by which it floats is total preference. Carl, for example, who I was talking about earlier, he likes this to go a step and a half. So if he plays this E note, for example, right here, and pulls up on the whammy bar all the way until it goes flat against the body as like a stopping point, his goes up a step and a half. To me, that's a little less musical, and for what I do, it doesn't really work for me as well. So mine goes up a whole step. So, and my B string goes up a half step. And that's just pulling it all the way back until it stops. So what's cool about that is you play those 2 intervals together, you get this. And to me, that is insanely useful and super musical, because how many times like these kind of like, so you can do like a 1 to a 2 minor or 1 to a 4, kind of implies those intervals really nicely. So you get this really nice, those kind of, it's just a slightly different flavor that you're injecting into your playing, right? It's giving you a little more color to paint with. And obviously you can go down as far as you want. So if I take this, right now this guitar is, let me jingle this around. For all that whammy barring, it's still pretty in tune, right? So if I take it purposefully out of tune, by the way, these strings are literally 1.5 years, 2 years old probably. I haven't put any graphite up here in the nut, which is recommended or no lube basically to let that, so those strings might be getting a little bound in here. So let me take like a note up and way down. So like, right? Now the guitar is gonna be out of tune. Okay, but because my string tension equals my spring tension, if I do this, now we're back in tune. That's pretty in tune for that big dive bomb I just did right there on a non-Floyd Rose, you know, boomer guitar. And that is super useful, guys. Having a guitar that stays in tune is the most important thing, because a $75 pawn shop Strat that's in tune will always sound better than a $250,000 Les Paul that's out of tune. So quick little review. Angle that bar like that to get the tension balanced. Then find the sweet spot, moving that whole claw, whatever you want to call it, down, up or down, to where the bridge starts to float, so you get a nice vibrato on it. And at the same time that's happening, if you can dial it in by moving it up or down, depending on how your guitar is already set up, to where your G string goes up a whole step and your B string goes up a half step. To me, that's where I like mine. It tends to be a really nice sweet spot for everything. So the next thing we're moving on to is a topic that angers many of you on here. So for those of you that subscribe to the channel, you've probably seen me play this guitar on different tracking sessions. And a lot of the time you're hearing the guitar in isolation just because the nature of what I'm capable of doing on a session, right? I'm trying to be creative and I can't, you know, sing a bunch of audio with songs that haven't been released yet and all that. So a lot of the time you're hearing just the guitar unplugged. And this rattle in my tremolo arm drives you guys insane. And everybody comments on that. I've had to respond to it a bunch, so I thought I'd mention that as well. That's a very deliberate choice. And the reason I like that is because if I let go of it, it gets out of the way, for one. Number two, what that does is it actually evens out the Strat. It makes it a little more forgiving. So a Strat, compared to like a Bigsby or something, typically it's very, if you move it a little bit, you get a lot of fluctuation in the pitch. But if you loosen it like this, there's a bit of play in it. So right here, nothing's happening. If I hit this chord, and I move this, nothing's happening. But if I go, it smooths out that pitch fluctuation a little bit. And it just makes it more forgiving. Another thing is a technique thing with that as well. You got to put it on the fattest part of your hand you can find. And so for me, that's along the edge of this palm right here. There's a little more squish in it. And so what that does is that also smooths it out rather than like playing with like your fingers like this. You know, it's going to get this real rigid kind of sound to it. You want that nice and smooth. That kind of thing. So that's a very deliberate choice, guys. And that's not everybody's cup of tea. It's a personal preference thing. But this, to me, is very musical. And that rattle you're hearing, you're never going to hear that on stage. If you have a drummer behind you, there's zero chance anybody's hearing that rattle. And in a mix, because I do this every day with this guitar, you're not going to hear it. It doesn't come through. In isolation like this, you might be able to hear a little bit of it coming through, but in the context of a mix, or if anybody playing around you, you're never going to hear that. So I hope that clears it up. I know that drives some of you guys crazy, but that's why I do it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is intonation. And don't skip this part, because I know you guys think, oh, I know how to intonate my guitar. I have a slightly different take on this, and this might be a Nicky setupism, but I've never heard anybody else discuss this. And to me, it never made sense why people, when they intonate their guitar, you know, they play the string, they get the guitar in tune, they play their harmonic right there, and they tune, you know, with the screwdriver to get that note to match the harmonic. And they get them to where they're just exactly dialed in, you know, 0 cents and 0 cents on the tuner. And for those of you who don't know what a cent is, if you take a half step on a piano or on a guitar or on any musical instrument, and you divide that into 1/100ths, each one of those 1/100ths is a cent. So 5 cents is 5% of a half step, basically. So what happens is everybody typically intonates their guitar with this really light touch, like, right, dialing it all in perfect. But then they go to play and everything's sharp. And the reason for that is people typically don't play in this part of the neck with this very light touch like you do whenever you're intonating a guitar. You play more inspired. And when you start digging in like that and gripping the guitar and playing it like you mean it, that pitch only has one place to go, and that's up. And so your whole guitar starts sounding sharp. So what I typically do, and I know there's guitar techs out there cringing watching this, and everybody's going to blow up the comments right now, but what I typically do is I run the E string, A string, D string about 1 cent flat. just a tiny bit flat. Not a lot, just a tiny bit. Most mortal ears cannot even hear that. And I'll run the G string and B string 2 cents flat, and then my high E string 1 cent flat. And the reason I run the G string and B string a little further down is because a lot of the time you get string pinch. If you just play like a bar chord, for example, like that, right? That's pretty dang in tune, even with 2-year-old strings, and these frets are not in the best shape anymore. The reason that's in tune is because I've intonated these 2 strings flat, and that's a lot of your string pinch comes from right here on that G string and B string, which are a lot of the time when you're playing bar chords or where your thirds live. And thirds naturally want to ring a little bit sharp, and that's where your tuning gets wonky. And so you're compensating for that. That's pretty in tune. So I look at the tuner here, for example, and I'm playing this chord. Sounds pretty in tune. My, that C sharp right there is flat, but that's why that third naturally rings in tune. But at the same time, like, oh, well, if you play other chords, it becomes the root now, and that's going to get really weird. Not really, especially because when you do this, a lot of the time you're pinching that G string a little bit sharp in that chord. And so it's helping to counter that some. And if you're playing a line, for example, you know, that's right there. If I bend that, I'm looking at the tuner, that is dead on in tune. So, and today I'm all a little bit flat. I know it's not that this is a very, you know, uncommon thing that you most likely haven't heard of. And I've never might talk about it, but I don't know, some of y'all probably already do this. But moving on. One more little thing on the tuning deal. I got this from Justin Ostrander's channel, who is an amazing guitar player, great channel. When you're tuning, go to your neck pickup. It gives you more of the fundamental. Quick little side note on that. So you're not getting all these weird overtones from your bridge pickup. Next thing we're going to talk about is string radius, okay? Not the fretboard radius, the string radius. The fretboard radius already is what it is. Your guitar is either 9.5 or 7.25 if you have an old Strat. If you got a fancy new one, it might have a compound radius. So I'm sure there's companies out there like StewMac or somebody that's going to sell you some fancy gauge that, you know, it's perfect 9.5 and you adjust your strings to that. Don't do that. Just eyeball it. You can look at the strings like this, and you can roll them and see if one is higher than the other. So like right now, this guitar is pretty dialed in, even though I haven't touched it in years. But, you know, I'll pick up people's guitars and I'll see the B string, for example, will be much higher than the G and the E string when I look across them like this. And that's such an easy fix. You just, you know, lower it right here. And it's most likely psychological, and I probably wouldn't be able to feel it anyway. But if you're doing something that's like, you know, a little more speedy on the picking side, you don't want one string that's jumping off super high or one that's super low and going to buzz out anyways. So just get something that kind of looks like eyeball the radius of the fret here, then eyeball the string over it. Make sure nothing's buzzing out anywhere weird, and just mess with it. You're not going to be able to do it in one setting, right? This is something that you keep the tools around your practice desk, wherever you play your guitar, and you tweak on it for a week or so. And it takes that long to get it dialed in. If I take a guitar to Glazer in town or anywhere, and I get it back, I'm still tweaking with it for the next week, because they're not going to sit there. You know, they're going to measure their stuff and have their tools and have a certain set of, you know, standards they usually operate within. But I know my instrument, and I'm going to sit there and tweak on it until I get it to feel just right, what feels most at home for me. And this guitar is a total rock. This is a custom shop from like, I think 2010 or something. And it's one of those few guitars that doesn't fluctuate much. Like I literally have not touched one screw on this guitar in a couple years, probably. And I shouldn't do that. I should make sure it's better. But honestly, it plays in tune and it sounds great. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. And when the seasons change, you know, the humidity in your house probably fluctuates. So every once in a while, you know, usually in the spring and in the fall, grab a screwdriver and tighten everything up a little bit. Just make sure it's all snug. That way you don't have anything loose and rattling out of your guitar or anything like that. I know, says the hypocritical guy with this jangling around. And talking about the whole custom shop, you know, cheap guitar versus expensive guitar thing. If you want to make a cheap guitar feel like an expensive guitar, grab a screwdriver and just roll your fretboard edges. Take it right there and push it down and compress that wood, and just kind of round that out between your frets on each one. All of a sudden, your Mexican neck that has these really sharp edges where it curves up to here, you get this really sharp point. You don't want that. Roll that off, and it feels like you've been playing it for 40 years. Little easy DIY trick. On to pickup height. So that's about where I run mine. If you can kind of see that, try to make that as easy as I can for it. Flip it around here so what you're actually seeing when you're looking down at your guitar. It's about where I run mine. Hopefully that's focusing okay. And I'm sure you can, you know, ask ChatGPT or Google, you know, correct Strat pickup height, but Strat pickups to me are all so different. And there's not really a standard by which you can put them. Like if you have a P90, you put the P90 as close to the string as you can. That's like a pretty solid given. But with Strat pickups, they're all over the map, like I said. I generally run the bridge pickup on this guitar a little higher than the rest, just because it's a little bit weak. And on the bridge pickup thing, this is the absolute have-to-have mod. A Strat bridge pickup to me is completely worthless. I hate them. It's never got along with it. Until I was like 19 or 20, me and my dad swapped a wire around to where this tone knob here also controls the bridge pickup now. All of a sudden, the bridge pickup starts to bloom and blossom and does this incredibly musical, lyrical thing. So it's a super easy mod. Just Google how to do it. There's probably 35 guys doing it on YouTube. So make sure that this bridge pickup can be controlled by this tone knob. I know some of the newer guitars they've been putting out recently, I think, do that stock, but most don't. It really opens up the range of this instrument and becomes much more useful in a live situation, a recording situation, and all of a sudden you basically just expanded its tonal capability. I'm not going to pretend to be some Strat guru. You know, that's the Scott Hendersons, the Carl Verheins of the world, those guys that do the Strat thing. But I've put more miles on this guitar probably than any other guitar I own. It's my first good guitar I bought. And I bought the Shell Pink Strat before the craze hit, y'all. I bought this in 2011 to go to college, and I played smoky bars 4 to 5 nights a week from age 14 to 18 to pay for it. And I love it. It's a great, great guitar. So the big takeaway, like I said, was, you know, string tension, spring tension, rant. Not all you guys are going to like the Rattle Bar, but I'm telling you, it smooths out the tremolo. That's a huge one. You can tell an amateur right away when they hit that chord and they do that thing. It's like immediate, oh, there's a person that's not really a Strat player. So that smooths it out a little bit. The intonation thing I know is a polarizing topic probably, but I'm telling you that works for me. And half of my life is fighting tuning, right? Guitar is an imperfect instrument. It's never in tune. You have to get it as close as you can. And that's what I've done with whatever technique I have, playing on records, you know, every day here in town. And it seems to work, and producers and artists seem to like it. And if there's any songwriters or producers or artists out there that want your music recorded, I have a full-scale remote production service here in Nashville. All you have to do is hit that link down in the description. It takes you to NashvilleTracking.com. That's my website. I also do one-on-one guitar lessons on there. I have the course coming out August 1st. Check that out. That's going to be the theme for the next 3 weeks, trying to push that before it comes out. I'll try not to wear you guys out on it too much. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, or if you think this is completely nonsense, let me know down there as well. It's always fun. And I try to respond to everybody. If you guys can take the time to especially make it to this point of the video, the least I can do is respond to you guys. So it means a lot you taking the time, and I hope you enjoyed it or found it helpful. Thanks.